So, Kevin, it was about a week ago now-ish. I'm sitting around, and then all of a sudden, my phone starts blowing up. I see Wrestling X, Twitter, dirt sheets,
Sorry.
news, and it wasn't. It was beyond wrestling Twitter and the dirt. It was just news generally. The Wall Street, like Washington Post, all these news publications, talking about Vince McMahon. And I
Yes.
thought, we haven't heard that much about Vince McMahon outside of him stepping away and stepping down in the middle of 2022 and then forcing his way back onto the board like months later. I haven't heard much about him really since. What's going on? And then we see that it was a 67-page lawsuit surrounding basically what he stepped down over. We'll get to it, Kevin, but so much to go over here. This is Vince McMahon. I'll just start by saying this before we throw to anything you have to say here. This is mainly going to be a Wrestling Uncovered Kevin sort of show here because this is his area of expertise. You're going to listen to him and what he really thinks about this, which is, I guess, the main draw of our show. But my God, this is Vince McMahon. This guy made wrestling.
Yes.
Without Vince McMahon, we're not doing this podcast today.
Right.
And now he's getting the Chris Benoit treatment for what we're about to discuss in the next 20, 30, 40 minutes. So, Kevin, that being said, I'm throwing you. Talk to us.
All right. So let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to July of 2022. An article drops on the Wall Street Journal alleging that Vince McMahon paid off a woman a lump sum of like $3.5 million roughly to make her not talk about the relationship that she had with Vince. Okay, cool. Vince McMahon is in hot water again, pal. There's just a laundry list of things that Vince McMahon has done. I'll go over those later on in more detail, but there's like Vince has done a bunch of stuff. So it's like, okay, Vince McMahon, allegations, whatever, he'll beat them. He'll be back and running the ship, pal. Then the details get worse and worse and more detailed and more graphic, and it's like, oh, he paid off former employees. He did this, he did that. He's putting like $4 million settlement payments with Christy Hemme on the books, on WWE's books, not using his personal bank account. And then it's like, okay, this girl who was supposed to be anonymous, her name gets revealed by some journalist. I don't really know who. I think it was Brad Shepard. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to, yeah, that's not factual. I don't know. But somebody, I think it was Brad Shepard, somebody releases this girl's name. Mm-hmm. Now her name's public knowledge. The NDA is broken. Potential lawsuits from Vince McMahon's end, that hasn't even been addressed yet. Vince can sue this girl because she came out and was like broken NDA. So that could get messy. Either way, the board of directors is like, hey, bro, probably think about resigning now. And Vince's like, pal, He shows up on SmackDown, and he's like, I'm here to start the show, baby. Welcome to SmackDown, pal. My daughter's here, my son-in-law, my son, my wife. Then now forever, WWE. Love it. Rah, rah, hoorah. Then more details come out. This girl's name comes out. This girl's like, hey, Vince, Vince, I had this relationship. There was sexual harassment. John Laurinaitis is involved. Johnny Ace, pal. John Cena's almost father-in-law is involved in this. Like, Vince was passing her like a toy to John Laurinaitis. Okay, this is weird, but it's not that weird. These are older white men with a lot of money. Not anything we haven't seen before. Throughout the Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein, Donald Trump. The names go on and on and on. Bill Cosby. We've seen this before with rich, older, powerful men that just think they can do whatever they want with women. Okay. Vince will survive this like he always does. Then he just resigns out of nowhere. And it just becomes a huge mess, right? Fast forward to 2023. The rumblings are like, oh, Vince is forcing his way back, pal. He's forcing his way back. He's back. He's not running the ship creatively, but he's back as the chairman of the board. Stephanie is gone again. Stephanie came back. She's gone. Now here we are, WrestleMania season last year. It's WrestleMania 39 season. Oh, wait, WWE is going to be sold to Saudi Arabia? Vince McMahon is going to say F you to all the board members and everybody involved? Like, I created this, I'm going to take it down the way I want. I'm selling it to the Saudis, pal. And that gets quickly denied after people made some hilarious jokes. Like, the memes about that were so funny. Like, I remember I retweeted a video of, like, Muhammad Hassan beating up The Undertaker, and people were like, oh my god, take this down, this is offensive. Like, WWE did it, bro. That's WWE produced content. I'm just retweeting it. Be mad at Vincent Kennedy McMahon, pal. So then WWE gets sold to TKO. And it's been relatively quiet since then. Vince McMahon took his money, sold some stock, cashed out. He still he was at the up until last week a member of the board for TKO. Big powerful guy, technically in charge of WWE, even though Triple H and Nick Khan are running creative and all the finances and everything else with the business. Then we fast forward to the day before the Royal Rumble. The day before the 2024 Royal Rumble. As you alluded to, more news comes out. And here we are again. Vince McMahon is back in the news, baby. And then it got weird real quick. Real quick. The details of this relationship that this woman had, this paralegal had with Vince McMahon, just were splattered all over the internet now. Now we got intimate and graphic and personal details, personal text messages, personal recordings. All this stuff is being flooded on the internet thanks to the Wall Street Journal. And it's really something out of a movie. It really does not feel real. Like, honestly, like, to coin it that way. Like you said, like I said, Vince McMahon has been in the lives of several generations of people now. And, like, everybody knew Vince. Oh, he's the commentator of the WWF. He's the owner of the WWF. Look at him and Hulk Hogan, pal. Him and Steve Austin. Oh, here he is in 2005 having weird segments with Christy Hemme and Candice Michelle and Tori Wilson and Sable. He's healing Candice, pal. And then in the 2010s, it's like, here's old Vince getting smacked around by CM Punk, headbutted by Kevin Owens, threatening to fire John Cena. And it's just like, Vince has been around forever, you know? He's just there. He's just been a staple of our lives as one of the cornerstones of one of the biggest phenomenons in pop culture is WWE. And then all these details are coming out about this guy. He had this relationship with this woman, and somehow Brock Lesnar gets pulled into this. Brock Lesnar wanted to see this woman urinate, a video of her urinating. Ah, man, just wow. Then allegedly Vince McMahon was defecating on this girl, forcing her to have threesomes with other wrestlers and other executives, unnamed executives of WWE. Unnamed executives. This is before TKO came and became a thing. So there's unnamed executives that Vince was forcing this woman to have sex with, allegedly. I don't know. I don't even want to begin to speculate, pal, but we know John Laurinaitis and Brock Lesnar are two of those executives and talents that were involved in this. Then the details come out about Vince with the dildos. He's got a black and a white dildo, names them after wrestlers as he's using them on this woman. I mean, she went into more detail about how they met. Vince lived in the penthouse of an apartment building and just became infatuated with her. It was like, oh, you have a year of law school experience. Okay, you'll be a paralegal in my company, pal. But you gotta sleep with me and John Laurinaitis. Like, I don't even know. Now, as you said, Vince McMahon is getting the Chris Benoit treatment. He's been removed from WWE.com. There's no mention of him. He's not in any graphics and involved in any part of the show in any way possible. Yeah. What's really weird about this, though, and I guess this is something that we should talk about. In the Royal Rumble press conference, Cody Rhodes was asked about this. And Cody Rhodes gave about as good of a rah-rah company guy, employee of the month answer as you could give. You know, Cody basically said, like, hey, that's weird. I found out about it when you guys found out about it. I'm not connected to that in any way, shape, or form. A lot of that stuff happened before I was even here. I have no knowledge of this. Cool, great answer. Then Paul Levesque. Triple H is asked about this. Close the press conference. And I gotta give it up to the journalists that asked these questions. Those are some hard-hitting questions they asked Paul Levesque.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try to quote them because I can't remember exactly what they said. So they asked Triple H some hard-hitting questions after hard-hitting questions. And there was one where he was just like, I got nothing, but I want to talk about the gate. I want to talk about the ticket sales. I want to talk about how big this Royal Rumble was. So he's essentially dodging these questions in the worst way possible. Like that's about the worst look that the head of the company, the face of the company from a corporate perspective, could give to the media, to the press. If you're going to open up your company for a press conference in a time like this, you know, like if Triple H didn't want to answer the questions, he shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like, it seems easy to say from this side of things to just say, hey, all he had to say was, hey, look, I know that's my father-in-law. I didn't know that stuff about him. I'm finding this out too, just like you are. He kept that side from me and my family. Or he could say, legally, I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
I'm in a bind
Yeah.
right now. I can't speak. I can't answer that question. I would love to give you an answer, but I can't answer it right now.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that probably would have been better. Yeah, how it did come off, and as you touched on in your Royal Rumble reaction that we did, Paul Levesque, just from the Triple H point of view, looks like he hasn't slept in like a week.
Right.
You know, he looks like he's aged about 5 years in the last year.
Yeah.
And how much of that has to do with this, or how much is just generally the pressure of head of creative, head honcho in the WWE? I don't know. Like Triple H, if he was sleeping 5 hours a night before, he'd be sleeping 2-3 hours a night now, if that at all. So there's that. Kevin, there's so much to unpack here. There's so much to discuss. There's so much that this means for so many individuals, and how much we don't know still. Because at the time in 2022, when like the initial report came out about Vince McMahon and the hush money and the paralegals, we were like, okay, that's Vince McMahon allegedly being a creepy, like weird old guy, being like having his fetishes. That's okay. Okay, see you, Vince. I guess. Bye bye for now. And then obviously he tried to make his way back. Pal, Stephanie, his own daughter, walked out, which is just like McMahon was like, no, bye. And like Stephanie walked out of the company, which is telling. And then you get to today, pal, and where we're at. I guess for starters, I'll ask this. I mean, there's a number of moving factors here, but Brock Lesnar. Let's just talk about Brock and the Brock part of this, because Vince we can discuss for hours. But Brock Lesnar, I ranked him. I think so. He's like top 12 all time. This is one of the greatest of all time, and he's now swept up into this where requesting, demanding videos of this woman peeing allegedly, but yeah, okay, it's like what?
Right.
Really? Why? Really? Isn't Brock like married?
Yeah.
Like, does Brock Lesnar, a guy who's 125 kilogram alpha male of our species, one like the Brock Lesnar, one of the great combat sports athletes of all time, does he need to be doing that? No, he doesn't. Like, I'm sure Brock Lesnar could walk into anywhere. Brock Lesnar could walk into a nightclub in Miami, Florida, and he doesn't need to be requesting, demanding this innocent woman's just send videos of her peeing. Like that's just common sense. Allegedly, and it's like your thoughts on that. Because I saw that part of it. I was like, yeah, okay, Vince McMahon. If he's just like a creepy old his weird sex fetishes, whatever. That's Vince McMahon. Yeah, okay, he's like 80. Yeah. But Brock Lesnar, like that part, I was like, really, Brock? If that's happened, like that sort of taints how I see him in a way. I'm like,
Right.
it's so unnecessary and egregious. I don't know. What do you think?
But where this gets foggy is the details about Brock's involvement. So, if you remember in 2021, Brock was going to be a free agent. There was a huge bidding war. Is he going to go back to UFC? Dana White wants him. He's taking pictures with Dana White again in Vegas. That whole song and dance that we've seen play out for the better part of the decade was going on. So the details came out that Vince was like, hey, look, Brock, I got this girl here. She's yours as long as you re-sign with me. Not only do you get all this money I'm offering you, but you can have this girl. I'll just give it to you. I'll pimp her out to you, bro. And Brock was like, okay. And Vince is showing him like explicit photos of the woman, and Brock's like, yeah, okay, I like that. I like that. Yeah, that sounds good. Throw her in, and we got a deal. So that's where this gets weird, Then she said that Brock and her were supposed to meet, but then it just never happened because of bad travel or bad weather. So the travel, there was some fogginess there, but some bad weather. She couldn't get to where Brock was in the middle of Canada. But I don't know. That's where this is like ethically brings Brock Lesnar into the equation. Now, I don't think this is anything that's like reputation damaging for Brock Lesnar, because I mean, if we're looking at wrestlers, if we're just looking at the top 10 wrestlers of all time.
I was going to make this point. I know exactly where you're going with this. I was going to make the exact same point. Go ahead.
All right. I mean, Hulk Hogan has more dirt than anybody on his name. Steve Austin has dirt on his name that people don't acknowledge. A small sector of people acknowledge, but very few people talk about the dirt on Steve Austin's name. But it's still there. You know,
Ric Flair.
yeah, Ric Flair. Ric Flair's another. Shawn Michaels. These guys have tons of dirt on their name. Now, Shawn Michaels is a bit different, some attitude stuff. I mean, he wasn't really out there breaking laws or doing any crazy stuff from an ethical standpoint that the other three I just mentioned were doing. Really, realistically, the only two guys that are like in the top 10, top 15 conversation that have like squeaky clean resumes outside of the ring is The Rock and Cena. Like, The Undertaker was there, and then he had some weird stuff because he supports like a political party that certain people don't agree with. I wouldn't even count that. I say The Undertaker's pretty squeaky clean too. So those three guys are pretty squeaky clean. You know, you look at Bret Hart, tons of stuff with Bret Hart.
Triple H.
Well, and I'd say
he's you know, he's closer to The Rock than he is the other guys from a reputation point of view.
Yeah, there's some questionable stuff like the Booker T stuff and some of the other segments he did. You know, he's got a little bit of that on his name, more on the Hogan side of things, but there's going to be more to come out about Triple H. Like, Triple H knew more than he's leading on about these segments. I assume he did. Like, I assume he had to have known about these lawsuits and allegations. He had to have known. So we're going to hear more stuff, I assume, come out about Triple H. Will Triple H be around post-WrestleMania season? What's going to happen? Is TKO going to clean house? They're going to get rid of Triple H and Bruce Pritchard and all these guys and girls? I don't know. But the Brock Lesnar, let's focus on the Brock Lesnar thing. So you're talking about all these wrestlers. A lot of them have flaws on their name. Is this anything where I look at Brock Lesnar and I'm like, okay, I hate Brock Lesnar now? Not really, like, per se. If more details come out and it gets crazier and crazier, who knows? But as of right now, with Brock, like, I mean, if we're judging him harshly, we'd have to judge everybody else harshly that has bad things against their name. So I look at it like, okay, the entertainer and the performer is one thing, the human being is another. Am I going to support the human being Brock Lesnar? Probably not. But the wrestler, like, I'll go back and watch his matches.
Well, then, I guess, what do you make of nowadays? Because I'm just talking in like a current context with WrestleMania 40, for instance. So Brock was pulled from the Royal Rumble match and might not be a WrestleMania 40 now as this plays out, which leads me to believe that there's more to come. Because, yeah, what came out in the initial 67-page document and just generally from like the last week with Brock, as we're discussing specifically, it was a bit like, how you doing? Like a bit like, not a great look by any means. That's not what we're saying at all. But yeah, not a great look. But it's not like with Vince, for instance, where you got all the text messages, all the stuff, all like the stuff where you think, oh my God. Like the Vince portion particularly, you thought, oh, that's just get him the hell away from anyone. Right. Just like exile him. Oh no, get him out. Whereas with Brock, it was just like, don't know. I don't know about that from the person point of view. You know, like, I don't know about that, but it wasn't like, oh my God, absolutely just F him, get him out for good, forever. Like they said, oh, that's how I'm told. I was like, really, Brock? Really? Yeah, really?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it is odd. I think they had no choice in the matter. Like, TKO has made it clear they're in no nonsense. And they don't want any kind of distractions like that. I think it would have been a terrible look. If this news comes out about Brock Lesnar on Friday, and then Saturday night he's there, German suplexing people, taking chops from Gunther. Probably wouldn't have been a great message to send. Go ahead.
But they could have had Brock Lesnar run down during the Rumble and just keep blasting Brock Lesnar's theme song to drown out any boos, pal.
Oh yeah, like Tony Khan.
There's a company down in Jacksonville who did that.
Yeah,
something very similar.
Yeah, except there's a couple differences there. Brock Lesnar brings a substantial amount of value to his company, and Jericho does not bring a fraction of that value to his company, pal.
Well, you know, we'll leave it there on the Brock side of it. Now, back to Vince, because this is what this is all about. Kevin, the fact of the matter is, as we discussed, this is the guy who is why we're here, Vince McMahon. And he has survived. And you can give us the laundry list in a moment of everything Vince McMahon has, you know, overcome, which should have brought him down. Things 40 years ago happened, which I'll let you read off the list in a moment. 40 years ago, and even beyond before then, things have happened involving Vince, which would bring down most promoters, most businessmen, most people, and he's overcome it all. I'll let you read the launch of how. What has Vince McMahon survived that's led us to this point?
Well, the first major allegation, or yeah, I guess allegation against him, major legend that's out there, urban legend, is Vince McMahon covering up the murder of Jimmy Snuka's girlfriend, Nancy Argentino. That's the number one, the first one right off the bat. That was like 1983, 84, around the time when Vince first came into power, first took over the WWF from his father. I made a whole video about this on my channel. Check it out, the Wrestling Uncovered channel. I made a whole video about this. It's booming now, pal. Business is booming over on my channel. People are looking up all the stuff, all the dirt on Vince McMahon, pal. So, yeah, essentially, Vince McMahon walks into a room with some police in Pennsylvania and was like, hands him a briefcase, and was like, hey, you guys didn't see anything. My wrestler did nothing wrong, and walks out. That's essentially what happened there. Then there's the Ring Boy scandal. That was going on from the 80s to the 90s. I'm making a video about that. Spoiler alert, got a video dropping about that. A very tell-all video. So I can't wait, I'm excited. I found some little-known details, seemingly little-known details. Doesn't seem like a lot of people know this stuff that I found. Was digging through hours of research. So that video is coming out soon. So I won't give out too much about that one. But most people know Pat Patterson, Harry Garvin, Mel Phillips. They were friendly to the little boys that helped put up the ring in the 80s. And yeah, Tom Cole was the guy that was like at the center of it, one of the victims. Kind of made it. He wrote a tell-all book last year about it, or hell, he passed away, but his family released the book that he wrote last year. So yeah, that's yeah, Pat Patterson had an affinity for the boys, and yeah, Vince McMahon knew about that, covered it up for many years. Then there's the steroids trial. Terry Bollea saved Vincent Kennedy McMahon. If Terry Bollea did not give his testimony and say, no, Vince never provided me steroids, Vince would have been locked up. God only knows what would have happened to the WWF. Who knows? Who knows, pal? That's another big allegation. Then, Owen Hart's death. Owen Hart, esteemed legend, Hall of Famer, icon of the wrestling business, fell to his death tragically at a pay-per-view in 1999, live on pay-per-view. Vince gave the family, here's $50 million, shut up. Nothing happened to him. Like, it's remarkable. It's absolutely unbelievably remarkable. Go ahead.
And like, I didn't live that, right? So right. I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who's been watching for over a decade now, like obviously after this. I cannot believe Vince McMahon survived that. How? You know, like that's the one of your beloved, really respected, industry-loved wrestlers, Owen Hart, due to poor safety and a lack of care and stuff that it's ultimately turned back on WWE. They're the company who are putting this event on. They had the idea of him coming from the rafters. He fell and died on the middle of a pay-per-view. Yep. Literally, he died on pay-per-view.
Yep.
And Vince McMahon, that alone, it would, you know, is more than grounds just to get rid of Vince and like overhaul the entire board. Not to mention the other three things you've just mentioned, which are all insane in their own regard. And carry on. There's more.
Yeah, I mean, there was Eddie Guerrero's death, which led to another steroid investigation where like Randy Orton, Edge, Umaga, all these wrestlers were named in a Sports Illustrated article as taking steroids, and Vince providing them with steroids, and Jeff Hardy, I think, was another one. Nothing really came of that. That it could have been a bigger deal than it was, but yeah, Eddie Guerrero's death sparked a little bit of controversy. People were like, a 38-year-old wrestler just had a heart attack, like in a hotel, and nobody knows what's going on, you know? Then there was the Benoit tragedy. I lived that. I remember till this day where I was when I found out about that. I was like, I want to say 11 years old. Yeah, I was 11 years old. And I remember my father was reading the newspaper. And he was like, hey, look at this. Chris Benoit died. I was like, what do you mean Chris Benoit died? You know, like I was like, what? Like Chris Benoit, what the hell? And I was reading the article and it was like, oh my god, this guy killed his wife, killed his special needs son, and then killed himself. And that was the biggest story that's ever hit wrestling up until the Vince allegations in 2022. That was the biggest story that ever hit wrestling. You got like Chris Jericho and John Cena and all these guys doing PR on Larry King. I mean, this was the most talked about thing. Could have easily taken down WWE, another one. You know, people could have been like, all right, look, we want nothing to do with this circus act. Like you got wrestlers killing their wives and kid. We don't want nothing to do with that. Shut it down. You know, they could have lost all their sponsorships, but they didn't. Vince always had a move. Vince was always ahead of the game. He pivoted. He created the Super Cena character that we grew to hate throughout the 2010s, and went PG and partnered with kid-friendly sponsors like Skittles and Snickers, and now here we are. So he survives that, pal. Then there was
Yeah.
Linda McMahon's Senate run.
Oh god, I'm happy you brought this up. I was going to mention this. Yeah, go on.
Yeah,
Go
Linda
on.
McMahon's Senate run. So Linda McMahon is running for Senate in Connecticut, and her opposition is literally pulling up footage from 2001 of Vince McMahon and Trish Stratus segments leading up to WrestleMania 17, where Vince McMahon is making Trish strip and bark like a dog on live TV and worship him and bow to him. Or not Vince, the Mr. McMahon character, I should say, is making the character Trish Stratus do this. That's all over Congress. Like, oh, this is the kind of wrestling that you want your kids watching. Like, this is what you represent. We want nothing to do with you. You run a circus outlaw company. We don't want you in Congress, pal. They survived that. Like, it's crazy. Just scandal after scandal after scandal. Every time. And there's a million more. I mean, there's so many. There's so much. Those are probably the most notable ones.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, these are the most notable and extreme ones. Not to mention, I mean, all the things that encompass like the wrestling business, especially on this scale, when the biggest company with like the biggest names and all this, when you've got, you know, dramas with like people want to take legal action, be that concussion, be that pay disputes, be that all the things that encompass wrestling, just it's phenomenal and it's unbelievable. And then like the ones we mentioned, obviously, as you discussed, the most extreme, like OMG, like ones that evoke a media reaction, like oh my god, that's awful. Like they're those ones. And there's all these hundreds and hundreds of things as well, which have either been swept under the rug or didn't get as much publicity or weren't as notable, but have all happened. You know, like I mean, just for instance, like yeah, when CM Punk got fired on his wedding day, and then got a shark lawyer and took WWE to court, stuff like that. All these different little things that just add up over the course of 40, 50 years. And it leads us to where we are today now, where I'm opening or getting sent these things from Brian or be that anyone else with the Vince McMahon like DMs with him, and it's like 20 lines of this like weird, like it sounds like something a 15-year-old like incel would say to an OnlyFans model. Like I'm reading these messages, I'm like, this is Vince McMahon, right? Like this is a guy who has done literally everything. He's worth God knows how many billions of dollars or millions, maybe millions now, but at one stage billion. You know, so much money. He ran the empire of WWE for 4 or 5 decades. And I'm reading these messages of him begging for things, and I'll you know, if you've read the messages, you've read the messages. I'm not going to just read out loud what he said in them, but I'm reading it in disbelief. I'm like, this guy, like this sounds like something if an OnlyFans model opened their messages, they have things like this. This is so sad. It's so pathetic. It's so cringeworthy. It's so desperate. It's like you just expect more from people who you almost put in a pedestal. It's like this is the Vince McMahon. This is the guy who made wrestling. This is the guy who has survived all this and puts this great product. Well, it wasn't great in the 2010s, but once great product on display and giving us all these characters and all these memories. That's Vince McMahon. And then I'm sitting here scrolling on my phone in January 2024, reading him saying some of the most vile things I've ever seen to some intern paralegal in a message. It's like, okay, sure, carry on.
Yeah, I found a great article as you were talking. A great
Yeah.
article titled "A Summary of All Known Allegations Against Vince McMahon." That was published by Wrestling Inc. Um,
Uh-huh.
you want to hear some
Go
other
for it. Go
allegations
for it.
here?
Rattle away, pal.
All right, so we've got a good one here, a spicy one, pal. In 1992, Rita Chatterton came forward alleging Vince McMahon forced himself onto her in 1986. That went that just got swept under the rug, as I'll cover that a little bit too in my video. And then she came forward again 30 years later, and still nothing, because everybody's like, ah, that girl's crazy, whatever. She was a referee in 1985. Who cares? Which is kind of crazy to even think about. I love the title of this. The pause button was pressed on the Nancy Argentino case for 30 years. Like that's so crazy. In 2006, a tanning salon employee files a police report against Vince McMahon, alleging forcible groping.
Oh no. I genuinely never even heard of that. And that's just happened. Like that reports happened, the allegations were put, and that it's so nonchalant as well. Like, well, it's just when like you read this big laundry list of all these things that have been survived and endured by WWE and swept under the rug, and Vince McMahon's been involved in, and these scorching allegations in isolation. And so just like, oh well, this tanning salon person put in a thing about this, and carry on, carry on.
Yeah. This tanning salon actually happened in nearby me. Happened in Boca Raton, Florida, which is Palm Beach County where I live. So the Palm Beach Post broke that one, pal. When WWE was in town for the 2006 Royal Rumble, Vince went to a tanning salon in Boca and showed the worker pictures of himself that she did not want. And yeah, so that's interesting. Wow.
And Kevin, I guess I'll lead us to this. What does this mean now? Like as far as I guess going forward with Vince McMahon, I mean, my first reactions, and as is the same with many people, it's over. Like he's obviously not coming back. TKO and everyone involved in the management structure nowadays are like, we have nothing to do with him. Erase him. He's done. And given some of these things we're saying, rightfully so, but there's that. So I guess is Vince ever going to go in the WWE Hall of Fame now? Like, is that going to actually happen? Like, are WWE going to actually do that now, considering this stuff? When in reality, this guy made wrestling. Like how does this get navigated for the next few years? Does Vince McMahon end up in jail for something, or does he just counter sue for breaking the NDA, or does more come out on Vince? I assume more would probably come out
Yeah.
if this is any indicator. There's probably going to be more stuff now that this lady's put out her like the lawsuit, or like what she says happened and all this. Who's to say maybe more won't come out, or maybe there won't be more follow up? And it's just. I reckon give this another year, 2 years. We're going to know so much more than we already do. We already know quite a bit from that one thing alone. Is Triple H involved in any way? Has Triple H been involved in any way? What does he know? How much does he know? How much is he allowed to disclose? This is his father-in-law. I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't know anything. This is a family member. You go to dinners with this person. You spend hours and hours a day working with this person for years. I find it really hard to believe you wouldn't have a slight inkling that something like this would be happening. I find, just as a grown adult male myself, I find it hard to believe that he would know absolutely zero about this. And as you say, with his Royal Rumble post-show press conference, the way the questions were answered wasn't great. He could have just said, legally, I would love to answer your question, give you everything I know, but I legally cannot. Like, it's even that answer. But saying, oh, well, I just want to talk about the Rumble breaking records. Like, okay, Paul.
Yeah, awkward. There are some more allegations here as well.
Uh-huh.
2011, a spa worker said that Vince assaulted her. And then Paul London accused Vince of assaulting Ashley Massaro, the late Ashley Massaro.
Oh, that. Oh my God, yeah, that was a whole, yeah. Oh dear.
It's tough. Yeah, there's gonna be more. I assume it's not gonna stop there. I mean, what do you? what do you do? Like, what do you do with this at this point? Okay, like, all right, the guy lost everything. You got it. You won. He lost his company. He's no longer being acknowledged by his company. What else is there to do now? Is he gonna go to jail? Are they looking for jail time for this guy? Like, is that where we are now? You lock an 80-year-old Vince McMahon up until he dies of a heart attack in a cell? I don't know. Like, I don't know what the end game is here.
Mm.
You know, I mean, he should have. I mean, yeah, if he's done all these things that have been alleged, he should be brought to justice. I agree. I'm all for it. It doesn't seem likely if he hasn't been brought to justice in all these years. Doesn't seem like, seems like he's, he's pretty escape prone. So
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. It's a black eye on wrestling, because this is the guy that built the WWE, made it the global phenomenon that it is now, orchestrating deals with Saudi Arabia and Australia and Puerto Rico and England and all this. It feels weird to have him just be erased. It's an odd, eerie feeling. Go ahead.
True. And then obviously this is, this stuff hasn't been like proven
Right.
per se. When it comes to this now, you can sort of connect dots when like I look at this and many people look at this. Stephanie McMahon literally walked out on her own father's company, the company she's grown up in. She walked out amidst a bunch of this stuff going on.
Right.
Like there's a bunch of these other situations where it's like, all of Vince's guys, so Kevin Dunn recently, for instance, either showing the door or mutual departure. In other words, they saw writing on the wall and knew something was coming, so get out of there before they're still, just so they don't get fired and all that. So there's that. And then with Vince, for instance, like you look at this and go, like, what? Yeah, as you say, what now? I realistically think what's going to happen from here is if there are any other women who have been either affected or involved in things, are going to feel rightfully empowered enough to go, yep, this happened, just to like get it out there to the world almost.
Yeah.
Does that mean Vince gets reprimanded any further? Probably not. Realistically, he's been blackballed, cut from the TKO, cut from the board. He has no stock in WWE. He's out of the picture totally. He's not creative. He has no say. So there's that. So from a day-to-day, is he involved in the bit? No, he's gone. So it's really just now going to be, just telling the world Vince did X allegedly, but in my perspective, this happened because this is what happened. It's just that stuff's going to be coming out for the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I also want to say one other thing on that lawsuit. Like one of the many things in there, which I was like, oh my god. I mean, between the messages, the stuff with Brock, there was a lot of stuff. The Johnny Ace thing, specifically the thing in WWE headquarters, which allegedly during the day, you were saying this during the day, John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon, sexually assaulted this woman, in the office.
Oh, in the
during
locker
day,
room. Yeah.
which I find I'm imagining, right, like in your own context, you go to work, right? Let's say you work in a big company office, company building. You're doing your job. You're plugging away. Picturing like the head honcho boss, another very high up person in the company, doing something like that in the middle of the day to another employer. I couldn't it's like mind boggling to me.
It is.
That sort of thing. So that's actually happened. It's like that's probably the worst thing in there, in my opinion. I think that's awful if that's actually happened. Like that's disgraceful, and justifiably so. Vince is gone. If that's the case, that's disgusting.
It is.
So
yeah, it's brutal. It's awful.
Yeah,
it's some awful things going on in that corporate umbrella. It's kind of crazy that all this stuff stayed hidden, all of it. And a lot of it is public knowledge, like the Ring Boy scandal. Public knowledge. Wrestlers talk about it. I shoot interviews all the time. People know about it. Every wrestling fan knows about it. And it's just like, that happened. Yeah, that happened in the 80s. Yeah. Whatever. It is what it is. Same thing with Jimmy Snuka's murder. Like, okay. Or Jimmy Snuka's murder of his girlfriend. We know about it. Whatever. It is what it is. It's odd. Go ahead.
I was one more thing before you go on. And the timing of this all, because from really the late 2010s through now, we've lived in a climate where if you call someone the wrong pronoun, i.e., look at someone and just say what your eyes believe, but they don't identify as such, you're an awful, evil person and should
Right.
be outlawed.
Right.
That sort of climate, and everyone knows, like what you can say, what you can't say, what's blackballed, and a bunch of stuff, rightfully so. A lot of stuff's very like, bruh. I look at that person say one thing, and apparently whatever. Like, that's
Right.
just one example.
Right.
We live in this climate, and yet Vince McMahon in 2021 is with John Laurinaitis in WHQ doing what's alleged in that lawsuit, allegedly. It's like that is mind-boggling to believe. I'm not doubting the victim in this case. I'm just saying, like, it's just incredible. You've got people who literally get cancelled on social media and shut down and blackballed for something they said 10 years ago that was at the time harmless. Just at the time they made an innuendo or like like this X is or something is gay, for instance. And at the time I was just like, that's just what he said. But that's being pulled up 10 years later and they're being cancelled. Whereas Vince McMahon is doing this stuff allegedly at WEHQ and it doesn't even see the light of day for like 2 years after it. As that's going on in a climate that's like the way it is. It's truly mind-blowing, like all of this to me, and it's nuts. And I'm happy this is seeing the light of day and it's going to be addressed in a legal proceeding. So we'll see just how this goes. But yeah, it's unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah. So what does this mean for Vince McMahon's legacy? We kind of touched on this already, but I mean, all this stuff was kind of baked into Vince McMahon. It was like already known, like, okay, this guy's kind of sleazy. He's an old weird guy. So I don't really see him any differently. Like, just say it, I don't see him any differently than I saw him before this article came out. Doesn't really change the way I viewed him in terms of like we already knew this. Like, we knew he was doing crazy stuff. Now we just got details of it, vile details. Like, I don't know if we really need those details. Like, is that necessary to get these like messages out there? I don't know. I don't know if that's necessary. Like, we already knew all this stuff about Vince, and it was just like, okay, he's a weird guy. Like, I wouldn't want to go get a beer with the guy. I don't know. It's foggy.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of follow on with that. Like, has Vince McMahon ever had the reputation of being some squeaky clean saint? No. No,
Right.
Vince McMahon is not John Cena.
Right.
Like, Vince McMahon isn't one of these, The Rock. Vince McMahon is not that, as we just discussed for, however long here. But seeing it so graphically does give it that extra thing to me. Like, yes, there's been all these things that have happened which we've addressed, but reading those messages and reading what allegedly happened in WHQ in like the light of day in like 2021 with John Laurinaitis, and like that just happens.
Disgusting.
Allegedly, it's disgusting. It's and just reading that, going, this guy is just like, he needs to be stopped, and he has been stopped now. Like,
Yes.
he's been exiled, so that's happened. It's like he needs to be like out, just period.
Right.
So yeah, it's a confronting stamp of, I guess, validation or approval on what we've already known for
Right.
years, basically.
Yeah.
Like, Vince is a bit suspect. He's a bit how you doing. There's stuff where it's like, he's into what he's into, but and then now we read these messages and we see this stuff and go, oh, no.
Not it. Yeah, it's not it. It's yeah, it's tough. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you said it. He needed to be exiled. He needed to be stopped. Corporate structure needs to get away from that mindset of like, this guy's just weird. He's rich and weird. Like, no, it doesn't matter how much money you got. It doesn't matter how much power you have in a company. It doesn't matter how well known, how well recognized you are around the world. You have to follow the rules too. The rules and the laws and the ethics and morals, all that stuff applies to you. And a lot of this makes sense. Like, if you look at Vince's childhood, like when I did the documentary on him, I was looking at his childhood. He had a messed up childhood. So of course, somebody that grew up the way he grew up is gonna, you give a guy like that billions of dollars and all the power in the world, I'm not gonna handle it the right way. It's just the one thing that I keep harping back on is, how did he get away with this stuff for so long? That's the part that doesn't make any sense. How was a blind eye turned to this by the feds, by the cops, by the government. How was like my I guess where I land on that for a solution would be like, okay, people look at WWE as just like, the sports world wants nothing to do with it. The sports world never acknowledges it. Entertainment wants nothing to do with it. Entertainment's like, don't compare us to that. They're kind of in this gray area in a world of black and white where they kind of do whatever they want, realistically, for years and years and years. Now it's changed a lot. The public perception of WWE has changed a lot. People are more accepting of it in the last like 18 to 24 months. And it's become cool again in a way that it really hasn't been. Like WWE is cooler than ever, arguably, at this moment in time. People are just like it's on ESPN. ESPN's social media is posting it. Bleacher Report. It just you could go on any form of social media and casually see these mainstream publications publishing clips of Roman Reigns, publishing clips of CM Punk's return. So I guess with WWE being embraced in popular culture in a way that it never has been before, comes all the dirt coming to light. And they were able to get away with this stuff for so long because it was just like, oh, that's a circus act. That's for kids. Once you're a grown man, you watch basketball and UFC and boxing. You don't mess with wrestling anymore. Everybody has their kid phase with wrestling fans, but now wrestling fans, I was at Tropicana Field. Like, it's not the same climate of wrestling fans that you saw 10 years ago. It's not a bunch of out of shape people that smell bad wearing CM Punk shirts. It's families. It's people like me with their girlfriends. It's groups of guys, groups of girls going to the show. Even I saw a couple of groups of girls by themselves. Like, it's become just casual, family and friendly entertainment.
Well, I'll just finish on my end by saying this. I think that's one of your best quotes we've ever done, actually. Like, basically, WWE's always been the grey in a world of black and white. That's so true. That's so accurate. That's exactly what it is. It doesn't have it's not sport. It's not just solely entertainment. It's always been that grey area in the middle. And WWE, Vince McMahon, and those around him, per what we're finding out now, and it's unfolding, how much of the power they've used from that to get away with a lot is coming out. How much money plays into this, and the fact that money can cover up a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah.
As we've seen here with Vince McMahon, money and power. I mean, that's Epstein's Island. That's what that's all about. This stuff isn't dissimilar. It's crazy, and it's the reality of the world we live in. Really, unfortunately, that once you get to that certain, like the Vince McMahon level, the so successful, so much power, it just becomes that you can just get away with near enough whatever you want, and or you have the money to cover if anything happens, or you have the power to suppress anything that tries to come up against you. And it's sad confronting and the reality of the world we live in, which is like. Yeah, so that's what I have. But yeah, blistering quote, pal. Some of your best work. WWE is the grey in a world of black and white. That is so good, pal.
Yes. All right, so I guess we could close it there. Any final thoughts?
Just waits to be seen what more unfolds on this. A lot of people on Wrestling X were, well, not a lot of people. I mean, the AEW diehard crowd were trying to use this as a way to take shots at Triple H and try and rip into Triple H. Triple H, he needs to step down. For what benefit? I don't know. Maybe stuff will come out and maybe you'll be like, yeah, well, we should have wanted his removal earlier. But for now, with what we know as of February 1st, 2024, people are just trying to come after Triple H for the sake of coming after Triple H because they're angry that AEW and Tony Khan's putting on a piss poor product. And we're watching babyface Chris Jericho with allegations wrestling this Fletcher guy on Dynamite. People are just trying to use this to come after Paul Levesque at this stage, which doesn't make any sense. So it waits to be seen. I'd like to imagine Nick Khan. Everyone says great things about him. It's not like people who are like, yeah, I mean, he's fine, but he's the man, so I have to, be nice about him. Everyone says Nick Khan's a great. Molly Querim on First Take was like, Nick Khan's he's a lovely, amazing person. So you've got that. Is that a payoff? Is that a rig job, pal? Is Nick Khan paying her to say that? I doubt it. It seemed pretty genuine. So, the brass nowadays seems to be far clear of that. There you go. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's it, pal. So that's it on Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Yeah, we'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.